Thanks. Yeah, I was away with Linda about a month ago now. We went to Scarborough for a weekend, and we were trying to find out what can we do, what can we do in November in Scarborough. We actually found a really interesting place. I don't know whether people know, it's called the Scarborough Fair Collection. And it's just outside Scarborough. It's some chap that's basically collected fairground rides and fairground organs, and vintage cars and all sorts of things like that, and he stuck them in some big hangars, so you can go and wander around this wonderland. And I'd recommend it. Certainly, it was a really good experience. But in this place, there was a fairground ride which caught me somewhat unawares. I don't know whether people are familiar with remember those waltzers you used to get, when we went to the fair, and you'd sit in this car, and it was the car would go up and down, but it would also go round and round. It's like flip you around, and you'd end up feeling sick, and I don't know. I hated them basically. I think I went on them once. But anyway, there was this ride. It wasn't a waltzer, but it looked like it was a converted waltzer, and they'd like put wooden sort of horses and made it look like a kiddie's ride. So me and Linda went on this thing, and when it started going a bit faster, and it was like going up and down. So you're on this horse going up and down, and then it went a bit faster. And this was all to the tune of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, when two tribes go to war like the end of the world. And then it went a bit faster, and I started to get a bit worried. And then it went faster again, and I started to cling on, and it kept going faster. At which point I got into sort of panic control mode, and I started to coach myself, saying things like, well, it's halfway through, just focus on that fixed spot as you go around, stuff like this. And 3/4 of the way there, but I was like going white as a sheet, because I'm rubbish on fairground rides. I'm rubbish on roller coasters. I'm terrified of them, to the shame of my daughter, who absolutely loves them. But anyway, I managed to get through this thing, and I sort of tottered off it with white as a sheet. Linda was having a bit of a laugh, and we went on another ride, and she was having a bit of a laugh with one of the workers there about my performance on this roundabout thing, and he said that, oh, well, that ride, that wasn't the top gear. That we don't send it to the top gear for the members of the public. They get too scared. But when people have gone, we have a go in it, and we send it up to its top gear. So I felt even worse at that point, thinking, I couldn't even handle the safe mode. Anyway, why am I saying this? It's actually because, and God speaks to me sometimes in really sort of strange ways. But actually, God gave me a picture. The Lord gave me a picture about a week later, which really spoke to me. And I think it was, a bit of a Lord's sense of humor poking fun of me as well, to be honest. But he gave me a picture of you remember if you go in like a children's play area, or and I'm picturing one from the 1980s or 1990s. You used to get a little roundabout. It was often a metal thing, and there were like handlebars on the edge. So you get on, your kids would get on, and you as the parent would kind of make it go faster by pushing it along. I think, do you know what I mean? Those kind of rides. You don't get them nowadays because they're considered to be too dangerous. The risk assessment has basically got rid of them all, fortunately. But anyway, yeah. So these roundabouts, what happens on these roundabouts is that the force, if you get on it, that the fact that it's spinning round and round, that the force that is generated pushes you out from the center. And and if unless you cling on, you just get flung out of the roundabout. So what you've got to do is cling on to these bars, and to push against this outward force. And what you really, if you're getting, if you're really tired, the best place to be is right in the middle, because the closer you are to the middle of the roundabout, the lesser the force is that's pushing you outwards. We actually know it as centrifugal force, if you remembered your O-level physics. But then, kind of God was starting to speak to me about this, and it was really interesting. And I'm just going to share a few things tonight around that. Quite a simple kind of idea, but I think it really does speak. So Paul was writing to the Corinthians, so 2 Corinthians, and he was talking about the pressure that he was under. In 2 Corinthians 1, he said, "We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we even despaired of life itself." And then in 2 Corinthians 4:8, he says again, we were under great pressure, and now he says we are hard pressed. So obviously things haven't changed from the time of when he was in Asia to when he was writing this letter. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair. And it feels kind of like that at the moment, doesn't it? In terms of our, the outward circumstances that we are in, we are hard pressed on every side. And we keep thinking it's going to get easier, but then it gets harder. And I feel like there are forces, the outward forces that are pushing us all the time away from away from that center of peace, which is Jesus. And I feel like what God was saying to me is, you haven't got a choice. You either press in or you get pushed out. It's almost like there's no middle choice. You can't be passive. So, and I felt like that was like a real word in season for me, because the outward circumstances that I'm experiencing at the moment and have been for a number of months I've been hard pressed on every side, and there's no choice. And if you just do nothing, you just get pushed away from Jesus. You get pushed out, into a place of further and further away from the one who is our peace. And it's funny, just like in a roundabout, the further out you get from the center, the more you feel that force pushing you out. Yeah, it's like that's what happens. The laws of nature are giving us a lesson here in terms of how we need to be close to Jesus. So thinking about some of the other characters in the Bible that we're familiar with, they knew about this principle. The heroes of the Bible all lived in the context of, just like Paul, overwhelming pressure. None of them worked out their play Bible. Think of David, talking about in Psalm 62, where he said, "From the end of the earth I will cry to you. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I." And and Paul talks again in 2 Corinthians 4. He says, we have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that this all surpassing power is from God, not from us. We are hard pressed. I mentioned that before. And even other places we can look at people who pressed in. Even thinking of the familiar story of in Luke 8 of the woman who pressed through the crowd to touch Jesus. And actually, when you look at that crowd, they were all pressing Jesus, but there was only one person pressing into Jesus. And Paul warns us actually about what it's going to be like, on the roundabout, is going to be like in the last days. It's kind of saying in the last days that roundabout is going to be going pretty fast. That there's somebody on the outside that roundabout that's pretty merciless, that's just making it spin. It's grabbing it by the hand and just spinning it faster and faster. And it kind of feels a little bit like that in terms of world circumstances at the moment. It's just the world's just spinning faster and faster. But so he says in 2 Timothy 3, understand this: in the last days, terrible times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, without love of good, traitorous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. And that is the culture in which we're increasingly living in, isn't it? It's increasingly a godless culture in which the force of circumstances, the force of the spirit of this age, the force of those who have come under the spirit of age, and are in obedience with it, and that are engaging with it against us in terms of the prevailing righteousness that we see in our culture. All these things are outward forces pressing against us continually. And, I feel that those outward forces are increasing. I've certainly felt it on myself over the last, couple of years. So this picture is, I think, actually quite a simple but profound one. What's our response to it? And so our response is we just need to be close to Jesus. It's as simple as that. We need to be close to Jesus. We need to be like the passage in Song of Songs where the beloved is seeking after the lover. And Song of Songs chapter 3 I'm talking about, and where she's waiting for her lover to come to her and he doesn't come, and she goes out into the city looking for him, and it says, I will get up now and go about the city, through its streets and squares. I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him but did not find him. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves? I said. Scarcely had I passed them when I found the one my heart loves. I held him and would not let him go. And I think that's the answer. That's the center of the roundabout. That's where we need to be. And actually, funnily, I'm just thinking, that ride at Scarborough Fair. I'm thinking now there was a guy in a little place in the middle where the guy who was in control of the ride. He would be there right in the middle. He wasn't being whizzed round. He was okay. There was a guy just standing outside who was like just walking slowly, and what his job was obviously to watch how people were doing, and to see if there was usually a small child who was really struggling and might start crying. Actually, it was nearly me, but never mind. This guy, it's almost like a picture of the Holy Spirit. If you picture Jesus in the center, in control of the roundabout, in control of actually over the world system, and there's the Holy Spirit beckoning us in to the center. And it's not easy to get into the center. We've got to use all our might and effort to push against that outward force, but we've got to get into the center, where there is perfect love. And I think one of the things that one of the forces that is operating right now is a spirit of fear. And that spirit of fear, I feel, it's come like a number of waves over our nation over the last a couple of years. We talk about the coronavirus waves, but alongside the wave of the virus, there is a wave of fear in the spirit realm, I feel. And I really feel that right now there is a new wave of the spirit of fear coming over our nation. It's almost accompanied by panic, and that is a really strong force that pushes us. If we're not careful, we come under a spirit of fear, and we become, we get the antidote to fear. Love is the antidote to fear, and who is love? God is love, and Jesus. I'm just thinking of 1 John, where it says, "There is no fear in love, all fear. One who fears is not made perfect in love." So we need to press in to the one who is perfect love right now, because that is the place of deliverance from fear. And I don't think there's really, there's really an option. I feel like what this picture was speaking to me about was a choice, basically, which is you either press in or you get pushed out. You either press in actively or you get pushed out. And I think for me, it was almost like a binary choice. It's like you've not got a plan B. Your plan A is to press into the Lord right now. There's no plan B. There's nothing else that's going to work. You're not going to come to a place of overcoming any other way. There's no plan C either. Even if the government's talking about plan B and C, well, there isn't one in the spirit for us. There's only a plan A, and that is to press in and to be as close as we can to that place where there is peace in the center, in the presence of Jesus. So there's no room for passivity. We've got a fear-drenched media right now, and if we listen to the media, and we're passively doing that, as typically we do when we listen to the media, we sit and we're passive. It just comes on us without any other action. So I'm actually stepping back from the media, as I've done on a number of occasions over the past couple of years when I've felt that the media is becoming really drenched in fear. I'm stepping back from it. It's not that I don't want to know what's going on. I'm very, very careful about how much I subject myself to it. And I'm just thinking, what happens when the people of God subject themselves to fear? And I was looking at, there's another story about the effect of that in 1 Samuel 13. Where it talks about how the Philistines assembled to fight against Israel with 3,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and troops as numerous as the sand on the seashore. And they went up and camped at Michmash, east of Bethaven. And seeing that they were in danger because their troops were hard pressed, the men of Israel hid in caves and thickets among the rocks and in the cellars and cisterns. Some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan into the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul, however, remained at Gilgal, and all his troops were quaking with fear. And that is a picture of the people of God when they look at the natural only, when they count the numbers of their enemies. And they don't have their eyes on the things of the spirit. And right now, it's really easy to get into that mode, because the thousands of chariots, as it were, the thousands of horsemen, they're all really there in a sense, metaphorically. All the things that are pressing against us are very evident. And unless we actually do something, we can end up quaking with fear, or even fleeing and hiding in caves, and it's not what God is calling us to be as a people. You know, we're called to be overcomers, and not to be overcome. So, and in a sense, there's another binary choice. You know, you are either an overcomer or you are overcome. These things are, you know, in the very most difficult, it's become much more evident and more binary, more simple. And you choose which one you want to be. There's kind of no other, there's no ground in the middle. So yeah. So how can we do that? How can we practically, what can we do to make sure that the outward pressure doesn't press us out? And I think for me, I'm just going to read a few little passages out of one of my favorite books, which is called Ordering Your Private World. I don't know whether people have come across it before, but it's by a guy called George MacDonald. And he in this book sets out a number of principles that enable you as a disciple to have an inward life which is able to withstand the pressure of the outward circumstances. And one of the he's got a number of memos that he sends to the readers of the if my private world is in order, it will be because I'm convinced that the inner world of the spiritual must govern the outer world of activity. And he then goes on to explain what he's talking about there. So I'll just read a couple of bits out. Let's see. I hope it will become apparent that if neglected, this private world will not sustain the weight of events and stresses that press upon us. So that root system in Jesus, that godly habit that is something that just happens, by which I am always pressing into the center every day. It's my character. But if we neglect that, then the weight of events and stresses that press upon us will be unsustainable. So, and then he says, our public worlds are filled with a seeming infinity of demands upon our time, our loyalties, our money, our energies. And because these public worlds of ours are so visible, so real, we have to struggle to ignore all their seductions and demands. They scream for our attention and action. But there is a private world in every one of us, a world that may be as infinite in size as we perceive our public worlds to be. But often this private world, like the depths of the ocean, remains unexplored, full of surprises, ambushes, emotions, and dreams. And so, yeah, and then just a couple more. So I believe he says that one of the great battlegrounds of our world of the contest that must be fought, particularly by those who call themselves practicing or observant Christians. Among these are those who work hard, shouldering massive responsibilities at home, at work, and at church. They are good people, but they are very, very tired. And they're more than often on the verge of collapse. And just yeah, so just sort of coming to what else shall I read? It's all really good stuff. Yeah, so I think I'll just read out an interesting encounter that he had with somebody at a meeting. I think he said he bumped into a man who has claimed Christian faith for a number of years. In the course of our conversation, I asked him one of those questions that Christians ought to ask each other, but feel odd in doing so. I say, tell me, how are you doing spiritually? Well, we don't often ask each other that. he responds, interesting question. What's a good answer? Oh, I'm okay, I guess. I wish I could say I was growing or feeling closer to God, but the truth is I'm sort of standing still. He gives the impression of wanting to pursue the matter, so I throw in another question. Are you taking time regularly to order your inner life? He looks at me inquisitively. If I had used an old Christian term such as, how is your quiet time? He would have known exactly how to answer. That would have been measurable, and he could have responded in terms of days, hours, minutes, systems, and techniques. But I had asked a question about the order of his inner life. And the key word is order. It's a word of quality, not quantity. Now he shows discomfort. When does a guy ever get to order his inner life? I've got work piled up to keep me going for the rest of the year. I'm out every night this week. My wife is after me to take a week's vacation. The house needs painting. So there's not too much time for me to think about ordering my inner life. And then he pauses for a moment and asks, what is the inner life anyway? Now that is a showstopper of a question. Think of it. Here's a professing Christian who's done church for years, has gained a Christian reputation for doing Christian things, but has never really pondered the possibility that underneath all the action and well-meaning religious noise, there's got to be something solid, something dependable. So, yeah, so I find that a really kind of challenging, kind of asking those really searching questions about, in the face of all these outward pressures, when it's really hard, what actually is there within me that I built up in my inner world, which will sustain me, which will enable me to keep pressing inwards into the center, or to stay in the center and not allow myself to be pushed out. What enables me to cling on in those circumstances. And I suppose sometimes I thought it's probably good just to say this, and hold your present position. If you're under really difficult circumstances, the first thing to do is not let go, of where you are at that point. Don't let go of the roundabout, no matter how hard it's going round. Even if you haven't got the strength to push in at that moment, just don't let go. That's the first principle. And, to be quite frank with you, that's been my situation over the last 6 months. I've been dealing with some really tough health issues that have limited my ability to do what I normally do, to press into the center. So I've not been able to easily pray for a number of months because speaking has made my face hurt. I've not been able to lead worship or worship at home easily because it's had the same effect. So some of those normal things that enable me to push into the center, I just haven't been able to do. And all I've been able to do is just cling on, basically. And it's not been pretty, but it's been necessary for me to do that. And I'm coming out of that now, thank God. But that I thought I'd just say that as well, that sometimes you just need to hold on. Yeah. So yeah, what I'll just sort of wrap it up now, I think. So, simple picture. Sometimes we feel like saying, stop the world, I want to get off. We can't actually get off the world, but we have to overcome the world. That's what it says in, I think it's 1 John 5 talks about, he who believes in Jesus is the one who has overcome the world. We need to walk out that overcoming. So that roundabout, we're on it, whether we like it or not. We're all on this thing, and it's spinning fast. So we need to, number one, make sure we don't get flung out. If we need to, just cling on. Number two, it's not really an option. We don't have any other option. We are either pressing in actively, or we're going to get pushed out by world circumstances, by our own life circumstances. And above all, the motivation to be in the center is because guess who's in the center? It's the lover of our souls. And that's where we all want to be. We all want to be close to him, you know, in his arms and not letting go of him. You know, that's where we want to be. No matter how, no, wherever we are tonight on that roundabout, you know, there's no judgment, but the place we need to be is there, right in the middle. So I will hand back over to Denver. Hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for that. It's very there's a lot in there to unpack, and there's a lot in there outlined. So we're recorded, which is good, and it'll be on YouTube, so we can go back to listen to that. It's interesting. You're talking about that because I guess in regards with what Carol was saying, and I was going to share this a little bit, and I will share this on Sunday when we do Avenue of Communion. Is that in just going in line with what you're saying, Brian? In Luke, Carol, Luke 22, looking at that verse 19, and it says, and he took bread and gave thanks and broke it and gave it to them and said, this is my body, which is given to you. Do this in remembrance of me. So there's the word remembrance, but if you break that down, it says to embrace. And so to embrace Christ, which actually embrace it's actually a third person. So to embrace is a third person. Embraces is past tense. And then there's embracing, which is the tense of going forward. And it's interesting, I was going to share that more on Sunday about us actually in that remembrance of Christ. What we're doing is we're choosing to embrace Christ. We're choosing to embrace his death, burial, and resurrection. And embracing, basically, it's like a close person or a loved one putting their arms around us. And I just thought that really kind of, obviously I didn't know what you were going to share, Carol or Brian, this evening. And I thought it just gives us that, you know, as we are on that kind of, if you like, roundabout of life or roundabout of church life, we can all relate to it, I'm sure, in different ways. It could be health scenarios, situations, as Brian, again, has referred to. It can be governmental, it can be restrictions, it can, whatever you personalize it to be. We can either choose to have that embrace. And it's interesting because today, as at Lincoln for the, there's a leadership gathering, which is a smaller group that meets on every 3 months. And they were talking at the moment, they're embracing and talking about what it is to be true disciples as leaders, disciples of the way and followers of the way of Christ. And this is part of what was being kind of discussed today as well, about actually pressing into Christ, which actually over the past several weeks as a church, the theme, if you've noticed, even this evening, was talking about being in the center. So whether that's stripping pulpits or stripping the man at the front or stripping a platform and actually making Christ central, whether that's the busyness of life. Yes, I can pray. Yes, I can do my Hail Marys. Yes, I can do my percentages. Yes, I can clean the toilets. I can do all the works and kill myself while doing that. Or actually, I can be like Mary and I can sit at the feet of Jesus, or Martha. Martha was busy on the merry-go-round and Mary was busy sat at the feet in the center of receiving from Jesus. She embraced the central intimacy. And I think the key, and it's interesting you were saying that because one of the things that I really am hearing more often, especially before COVID, but significantly the last 24 months, and nothing against any denominational things or even churches, but that they say there's multiple thousands of churches in the US right now every month that are closing. There's been hundreds of churches in the UK that have been closing. But the other big thing we've seen for years is this giving up of ground and giving up of land, whether that's been the Methodists, the United Reformed, whether that's been the Baptists that have sold part of their premises off because they couldn't keep the upkeep going. And we've allowed this kind of decay, we've allowed this land to be taken from us in the midst of the vastness of life around us. And I like the fact of you saying it's about the pressing in, or we get pushed out. And the interesting thing about that is when you go on these, I have to say, I'm not a big rider myself. I don't like going on all these rides. I do end up being quite kind of sick and dizzy, but they do encourage you to keep the force of your body in tight, whether it's ones that's going around like that or whether you're going on a massive big roller coaster at Lightwater Valley or wherever it is. They encourage you to hang tight and keep in the middle. And what they also encourage you is to embrace each other, so to lean into each other, so that the force, the dynamic of the force doesn't throw you out, but actually propels you in. And I think that, right now, the forces around us would very interestingly cause us not to embrace the finished work of the cross, not to embrace fellowship, not to embrace worship, not to embrace fellowshipping together, not to embrace communion. And it would force us to run into areas of fears, phobias, anxieties, whatever that could be, or whatever we're dealing with. We're pressed, maybe we're crushed, maybe we feel disheartened, maybe we feel discouraged, maybe we feel despondency. But in that way, that we're not to give up, as Brian has said, that we're not to let go either. And again, it comes down to that song. Again, it's this evening's gone intricately so well. It's in with that song that Kev has brought to us this evening about in His presence, and about being in that place of His peace and provision, and into that intimacy, that place of protection. Those 3 P's of the peace, the provision, and the protection that only really comes when we're in Christ. And so, there's that word tenacity. It's something that God has really hit me with, is tenacity, but it's choosing to be an embracer of the way, choosing to be an embracer, so in other words, being a disciple, choosing to embrace the truth over the false, choosing to embrace love, the counterfeit, and override fear, choosing to embrace hope where there is despair. That's not denying the facts of the situation that's going on around us. It's choosing wisdom. It's gaining the knowledge that we need to have, and it's being honourable towards the kingdom of God, and also honouring others, and preferring others over ourselves, which is what true love really does. And also just being in that place of embracing the compassion, the love, and the grace of God as we're in that center part of intimacy. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I'm going to bring a little bit more about that maybe around communion on Sunday, about that word remembrance, but also that word embrace, because here he's talking about the third person, because obviously he's talking about the Spirit of Christ. And right now, obviously, Jesus is not with us physical form, but he is with us in that third person. But then there is the aspect of embracing the coming kingdom. So there's the future tense. Then there is the aspect of embracing the past tense of the things of the past of the kingdom, but actually living in that third person present tense of the Holy Spirit. And again, he lives on the inside of us. So the world around us, our thought lives, the heart patterns, what we hear, what we see, we taste, we smell, the 5 senses, they can be at times the kind of roundabout, but actually the core value on the inside, I do really feel is the prime. It's almost like that place where that peace is, that inner peace. I know for me, when it's making decisions and choices, to me, it's all about the inner peace. Do I have an inner peace, not a heart, not in the mind, but do I really have an inner peace of when working with somebody? Is there a peace? Making a decision, is there a peace? Seeking what God wants for 2022, is there an inner peace, or do I feel uncomfortable around that? So I really want to just thank you. Kev set off this evening, Carol for bringing that into us, and obviously Brian for sharing that word with us this evening. And I would recommend that book. By the way, I read that book, Ordering Your Private World, by George MacDonald. That is a very good, a great book of just grasping the inner sense of inner intimacy, the inner growth, Because again, just drawing to a close, a lot of times, I said recently, I think that I've done a few walks recently, locally, different things. And if you go into Esholt, there's some trees that have kind of fallen down, and you find that they're surface kind of roots, the roots that are all on the surface, you can kind of see them. And the deep-rooted little small trees have stood the test of time. And a couple of storms recently have unearthed those trees that have had shallow roots. How are you doing, brother? Yes, I'm okay. Oh, I'm highly blessed and highly favored. Everything's going well, fantastic. But actually, no, I'm mentally struggling, I'm spiritually struggling, relationally struggling, financially struggling. I'm stressed out. I've got no navigation because I'm so busy. And actually, the reality is it's having that inner peace that then comes out and transcends the outer peace. Like Kev this evening when he came on was laughing, his head off. And it's interesting because just earlier today, a post came up from 2019, and there's Kev, there's Brian, and there's Penny on the stage. And there's Kev, he's got a massive big laugh. He's laughing his head off. I'll post it. I'll send it through to us later on. But I just thought, the joy of the Lord is our strength. And again, it's the inner strength when naturally the strength has gone. So I really want to massively thank you for being on with us again this evening and encouraging, and again, please do go back. As this is recorded, it'll be on YouTube. We do try to get it uploaded onto YouTube as soon as we send the link out. A lot to take in, a lot to consider on that journey. And, we do say just take the meat, leave the bones on whatever it is that's been said. But it's interesting. The theme has been for us on a number of weeks now, whether it's been at worship, whether it's been on Wednesday in the Word, and I guess there's aspects of it as well on the morning Zooms, various things, is that intimacy and getting back to the core value of it being Christ and Christ alone.